I'm Faith Dahlquist, and I'm the Associate Superintendent for School District 308.
Okay. So like in so kind of along the lines of the questions that were sent out, we're just going to be talking about the district's response to the coronavirus, and how things have been going since then, and what, if anything, a look at the future could show us. All right.
Okay.
So and you've kind of talked about this already in previous Board of Education meetings, but when did the district start making preparations for how we're going to respond to and handle the coronavirus?
Right. And well, there were various stages of that. The very initial pieces were happening around March 10th and 11th when we began to think, okay, it is really a possibility that schools may be shutting down to make sure that everyone is safe. At that point, we didn't have guidance from the state yet on what that would look like, because the state also understandably was trying to create this, and we've never been through it before.
Yeah.
By about March 11th, which was a Wednesday, we began to think, okay, we need to get going with e-learning, which is different than where the state landed with remote learning and e-learning plans. There was kind of a relaxed piece of that, and we worked around the clock to submit our e-learning plan to the regional superintendent, and got that done by March 14th because we anticipated that's what we would be doing. And then that didn't last for very long. I really want to congratulate my team by that March 13th, which is Friday. At the beginning of the day, we literally, we're putting some things together, but we know we're going to see the students again, but we were creating choice boards for our elementary students so that they would have assignments while they're at home. By 10 o'clock, it really looked like, oh, we might not be coming back to school at all. By about noon, we were fairly certain that that was going to happen, and my team put together choice boards, translated them into Spanish, got them all copied and distributed to the schools, driven there, at the end of the day on Friday, which ended up being our last day of school. Who knew back on that Friday the 13th that we would be in this. But in the next few days, we only had 4 days left before spring break at that point, and those were active God days where everybody was just kind of waiting to see what was going to happen. And we started to hear from the state superintendent as well as the governor that plans would be coming. So every day at spring break, kind of waited, like, all right, it's gonna be coming, and then we can plan. And it came on Friday, March 27th at 7 o'clock, that here were the state guidelines. And we had until Tuesday to get them in place. And Monday, all of SD308 was still on spring break. So we spent a huge amount of time, never went to bed Friday night, planning, communicating, thinking about what we were going to do, pulled in all the directors and the principals over the weekend, pulled together what our plan would be, created communications for our parents and our community, as well as how to train our staff through Google Hangouts without having the opportunity to do that face-to-face. The state allowed for 5 remote planning days. We took one of them on March 31st, so ironically, in SD308, remote learning started on April Fool's Day. We then began our different schedules and pieces, and we built time into that every 5th day for our staff to have Google Hangout meetings like this with the principal to give more communication and guidance. At that point, we still thought it would only be a couple of weeks. That turned out obviously not to be the case, and we finished off the school year that way. So had to do a lot of, and literally all the planning for remote learning came over the weekend as we got guidance from the state on that March 27th, and we had to have everything in place by the morning that we came back from spring break was that next Tuesday.
Okay. What was parent response? Because I know that we had e-learning, and then we had remote learning. What was what was the response from staff, from students, and from parents to how everything went? Because I know, at the outset for both of the formats for e-learning and remote learning, there were some difficulties, but it seemed like once we got the ball rolling, it seemed to be going pretty well.
Right. Well, and I'm just in the process of reviewing a lot of the parent survey responses. We just pushed those out this week. And I'm anticipating that we're getting a lot more. As of this morning, I checked right before we got online here, and we have 3,100 parent surveys back.
Oh, wow.
And we're also surveying the students and the staff and the administrators too. And all of those are coming into my inbox as we go through. But the thing that I'm most impressed with, and I think almost everybody can agree with, is that we had a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to show our students how we as adults can cope with large amounts of change, and show them how to be resilient, how to figure out very complicated new things, how to still have a sense of humor, and that didn't work as well as planned. Let's redo this. And sometimes to our students, because we bring polished lesson plans or polished meetings, you don't have as much opportunity to model resilience and that growth mindset, and we had the opportunity to do that. I think everybody is in agreement that we would really rather be in face-to-face instruction. There are a few student surveys that felt like this was great because they had more pacing of their own that they could decide on. They could sleep in, they could do those pieces, but not having that connection has been difficult for all. Yeah. And especially our parents that have younger students that are trying to work from home themselves or doing that. Our youngest learners have struggled the most with trying to connect via Google Hangouts Meet or just follow directions. And they're not independent by their nature, where they're at developmentally. So having to have, it's been both frustrating for teachers and parents to help our youngest learners really feel like they're getting as much out of the instruction as they would be face-to-face. So obviously the state guidelines for remote learning were a much more reduced rate, and we had to work very quickly, especially at the elementary level, to tailor back what math and literacy standards we felt were essential. We had to redo all of our report cards and bring those pieces back. For the most part, people have felt good about how we met the state guidelines, but the state guidelines for how much instruction are so far less than what a regular school day, that some of that frustration is there. Obviously, we got better at communication as we went through. As we used our free platform, Google Classroom, where other districts have learning management systems. Our junior highs and high school staff were more equipped to do that and were more familiar. But our elementary teachers had to learn a lot about that. And then our parents knew very little about Google Classroom, understandably. And it is not ideal to try to communicate and teach about that through a different mode than anybody's used to. So I think there was a big learning curve there. We've already identified quite a few things that we will do differently in the fall or later on in the school year if we do remote learning again. But for the most part, I think staff and parents and students were pretty satisfied with where we're at, given the natural frustration that remote learning caused for everybody.
Yeah. Okay. From what I've seen, one of the big pluses, I don't know if it can really be called a plus, but something that a lot of people have really been praising the district for was the, I'm trying to figure out what the best way to call it would be, the meal distribution, continuing to feed our lower income students, and not just our lower income students, but all students throughout the shutdown. And as I understand it, we're going to be extending this at least into June. So
correct.
Why open up walk me through the opening up meal distribution to everybody. Sure. and how that's been going.
Right. We actually have been on average between 1,300 and 1,400 students that have been served on a daily basis
Wow.
with either breakfast or lunches. And we've had that at different sites, and people just drive up in their car and we give them that. We've also been handing out some books that we wrote a grant for and have been giving books out to people. We're trying to continue the same types of services as best as we can through remote learning as we would during other times. And we have lots of students that are on free or reduced lunch that get dramatically reduced or free breakfast and lunch. And we realize that a lot of our families are still in need of that assist. Some of that guidance and suggestion also came from the state. So there are many, many school districts that are doing that. It's a little different in Oswego because we've got many different sites, not just one-stop shopping that some people would have to drive many miles to get to. And you are right that we're going to continue that all the way into June. We are really blessed that we've had lots of community cares volunteers that have come in and are there almost on a daily basis, whether the weather was great or not, to hand out breakfast and lunch to everyone. Kind of similarly, we did that with technology as well, where we handed out devices and even internet access to those families that said they wanted to do that. And we began to do that not only, at first we did it coming into the building, and then as the weather became nicer, we're doing that through drive-through as well, that come through drive-through and you get a Chromebook to help with all of that. So we're really lucky with the volunteers that we've had to support both device and the food handouts.
Okay. So the school year is officially done for everybody. I mean, obviously we haven't had graduation yet, but there is no learning, there's no classroom learning-ish going on right now. So next up is summer school. What is summer school going to look like for District 308?
Summer school is also going to be all online. We had to make that decision pretty early on. And as we looked through what that possibilities would be, we didn't want people to sign up thinking that they were going to come to school and then change it on them. So maybe June 1st will show that we could have some of those pieces done face-to-face, although my guess is that we'll still not be having any kind of typical school by then. So it will be all remote learning, but I kind of changed the term a little bit because it won't be remote learning where only your grade can improve. Like the state had set out guidelines on remote learning about what grading could happen and not. This will be online summer school. So it will be taking grades. It will be assignments and due dates and things. And we've done online learning classes before through summer school and even in the evening. But because we don't have that face-to-face option right now, they'll all be online.
Okay. And kind of along those same lines, the discussions I know are being had very, very basic at the state level, but what could the coming school year look like?
Well, there's three different options that the state is hoping each school district will prepare for. The one we all want is back-to-back, face-to-face with some extra precautions around hygiene and cleaning and all those things, but that we can look pretty close to normal. So that's the one we're all hoping for. But there also is the option that do we have some face-to-face interactions but have to rethink school so that we are in much smaller groups? And we have not begun too far into that because to plan too far ahead when you don't know what those parameters are going to be doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But we are prepared to rethink schedules, to rethink class sizes, to rethink bus routes, all of those things that we might need to. And then the third option that we all have to prepare for is whether we need to be doing remote learning either at the start of the school year or even if we're allowed to be face-to-face at the start of the school year, the chances of a second wave coming or having to close down to make sure everybody's safe is very, very real. So we're spending the most of our time right now in that third option of how do we improve remote learning. The state hasn't come out yet with what those new guidelines would be, but we have a list of things that we know we can be better at. And with given a little bit more time other than a weekend, we can be much better with some of those things. And we've gotten more feedback on the type of or frequency of communication that parents
Yeah.
would want.
Okay.
We know a little bit more now of what our staff really would like training in because they've done it now and know where their strengths are and where they need some help.
Okay. And I know that I think in the past week or so, some guidelines have been put out regarding extracurriculars, especially sports, because I think that's one of the biggest things that is going to help create some sense of normalcy going into the school year, whether or not we can go to Pickerel on a Friday night and watch a football game. So do we know anything about what extracurriculars are going to look like?
Until we know what size of crowd is allowed to gather, and until we know what social distancing parameters are going to be put in place, a lot of it is just guesswork and the what ifs at this point. Just even thinking through buses or how you would distribute tickets, and of course concession stands would not be a possibility in all of those things. But there are some sports that you could stand at a distance. But right now, we're kind of in Illinois, at least, a state of we're not really sure yet when we're going to get to the next stage that would allow us to do more things at school. We're optimistic as we get to June 1st and there's a little bit more opening up in the community and there'll be some more interaction that will begin to have a predictor about whether we're able to sustain the numbers and not have more people getting sick and then continue that path. Or it could happen that as we open up a little bit, those numbers increase and then we have to roll back.
Yeah.
So right now, it's just waiting to kind of see how the state, as they open things up, what does that cause in reactions to the health and the numbers out in our communities.
Okay.